Here's the plan. The big 3 points are exercise, nutrition, sleep, with some other stuff mixed in. In terms of exercise, what I'm planning to do is I am too feeble and messed up to do proper weight training. The big problem is I believe I have what is called cubital tunnel syndrome in my right elbow. So if I do any kind of weightlifting, this immediately flares up. It's extremely aggravating. And it's a hair trigger thing. So I have to find a way to work around it and still get a little bit of resistance training in without being able to do things like bench pressing or bicep curls, stuff like that. Pull-ups, flare them up, flare it up. Believe it or not, I used to be pretty big into weightlifting. I did it for a while until this problem developed, and it's just stuck with me since. That's something I may actually end up seeing a physical therapist for at some point. In the absence of heavy weightlifting, I'm going to be focusing on calisthenics, isometrics. I'm really interested in this thing called muscle control that the golden era, or not even golden era, I think it's like bronze era bodybuilders, the physical culturists used to do, where they would advocate this home fitness regimen where you would just flex the muscles pretty much as hard as you can deliberately and in as much isolation as you can get away with while gripping a really light dumbbell really hard. And you can simulate something like heavy weightlifting doing that. And there's a couple people online who claim that this actually works. So that's an interesting option to me, an alternative thing. I don't know how harebrained that is or if that's real, but I might give it a shot. Regardless, doing as much resistance training as I can without making things worse, and obviously needing to be gradual with it, with an especial focus on strengthening my core and my posterior chain. Despite how picturesque and anatomically flawless my ass is, it has atrophied from a general regimen of sitting around, laying around, and not being active enough. And I think that is a root zone. The asshole zone is a problem zone. In fact, I was doing some posterior chain exercises last night and I got a cramp so severe I was almost in tears. And the inner ass, the inner zone of the left ass cheekal region, this isn't the content that you wanted. Maybe it is. But I think that's an indicator that that really is terribly weak. My plan is also to work in as much non-resistance movement as possible. I've done this thing. It's always had pretty remarkable results for me. It always seems to help. I don't know what to call it. It's almost like this middle point between yoga and freestyle interpretive dance that I really hope I'm not going to show a clip to you of, because it would be very embarrassing. The basic thing that I do is, whether standing or kneeling or on the floor, you just kind of move around, and you move in weird non-linear ways that you never would just sitting around and working or walking around doing normal life stuff. I always feel amazing after I do it. I think I'm going to do that as much as possible. My understanding of my issues is that the musculature, the nerve systems, the fascia, it's all just kind of locked into this rictus in certain points, certain spots. And that the way to lift it out of that rictus is to move it. And I've never really done it consistently and in a targeted, thoroughgoing way. I've always kind of leaned more towards trigger point type stuff, foam rolling, using, a Theracane on trigger points. I think that stuff only gets you so far, and I wonder actually sometimes if I'm overly aggressive with it and potentially just damaging those tissues further. I think actually just moving it even with no resistance probably is preferable. So doing that as much as possible, like doing it while I'm watching YouTube or doing anything that I don't have to be really focused on whatever it is I'm paying attention to, just to work that kind of movement into my life more. I also don't stretch enough. I have hilariously tight hamstrings. I have congenitally tight hamstrings. Everybody in my family, or at least my father and brother, this is the case with them too, to the point where I have to typically do yoga for like a month before I can touch my toes. And I've done yoga in the past. People have suggested yoga to me. It's been okay. I've never really gotten that amazing of results with it though. But stretching more, stretching daily. I also want to walk more. This is a pain point because I have this thing going on with my left foot where, what's it called? The middle toe? The toe to the left of the big toe, the long boy. That joint becomes painful. And I think I may be developing a hammer toe. And I have a history of having flat feet and wearing corrective orthotics all the way up the pay grade to the $400 custom orthotics, and it just made things worse. I've had weird foot pain for a long time. I've gone the opposite direction of wearing flats, basically. They're not, I wear Toms that are just, they're completely unstructured and flat. That seems to have made things much better as well. I was trying to transition to barefoot walking because of course I would, because look at me. And I was trying to train myself up on barefoot walking. I would go to the park and walk around barefoot on the grass. And the ramp up period for that has to be so gradual that it's like torture. And I overshot the mark and I just started adding on too many laps too quickly, and it exacerbated that joint problem. And now it seems to have leveled off, but it took a long time. So I may eventually go back to trying the barefoot walking thing because I'm a little bit foot pilled on the insole thing. I kind of buy into this argument that the static supporting structures of foot inserts actually weaken your foot muscles and lead to more problems. I think I believe that at this point. So maybe barefoot walking in the future, but for now, this middle compromise of the unstructured, relatively thickly soled shoes, trying to do as much walking as my body will let me. Also, I've been doing this thing where I walk, at this point it's 3 blocks. I'm progressively going a little bit farther, while doing this isometric clench with the musculature in the back of my neck. A big root cause of a lot of my problems, I believe, is forward head posture. I'm not correcting at all, and I'm also not looking. Yeah, you can see how far forward my head is. This is just my natural set point of how far forward my head is, and this is actually an improvement over what it was. If you go back and you watch certain old videos, you can tell it's actually worse. So I'm very focused on correcting that through isometric strengthening stuff and certain like upper crossed syndrome exercise regimens. The big thing that I've found to make a difference is there's this muscular structure back here in this part here that I can, if I'm really focused in on it, I can clench it and pull everything back right from that spot. And it's a specific spot. And when I do that and when I hold it for long enough, the symptoms in my face go away. I can feel them reduce. I have this feeling of typically intense pressure in my front teeth and in here. And this is the trigeminal nerve right here. So it's a branch of the trigeminal nerve that is compressed somewhere, I believe, or inflamed in some way. And I get jaw pain as well. I get pain up here. Basically, this whole side of my head is messed up. Under the jaw is messed up. Down in here, this whole complex. Everything, this whole quadrant of my body is shot. But when I pull back from right here, this all goes away after a little bit. And I've just been increasing the distance that I walk while holding that statically and not releasing it. And I can feel it getting stronger and stronger. And I'm hoping that makes a long-term difference. So what I will do is I will walk down one direction while doing that, focused on that, pulling everything back. And then as I'm walking back to my apartment, I focus on releasing this and holding my head straight up, focusing on keeping my head as high up as possible. And there are all kinds of stabilizing muscles that just screech when I do that. especially when I first started doing it, they were so weak I could barely get half a block just holding my head up straight and not in this compromised forward position, just straight and not crazy woodenly straight, but as straight up and down as I can naturally get away with doing it. All of this was just an agony, and that is alleviating. So I think all of that will contribute. I have also noticed this thing that happens, and I learned this from doing float tanks, which is something I'll probably talk about at greater length, even than this, admittedly, probably already long video. The first time I did a float tank, also called an isolation chamber, also called Joe Rogan pod. I did it for 2 hours, and it took about that amount of time to fully relax my body. And it was a whole saga. It was an incredible experience. I didn't experience anything psychedelic or weird. It was purely just physical. But it was like finding out your body, as cliche as it is to say, it's like finding out your body is an onion composed of layer upon layer upon layer of chronically held muscle tension. And as each layer peels back, you get deeper and deeper and deeper until you get to a point where you have this like fundamental clench, this base layer tension that you're holding. And then when that releases, it's an amazing feeling. It was quite moving when it happened, and hard to really describe. And it sounds pretty woo-woo, but it was purely just a physiological sensation. And ever since then, I've never had it to that dramatic an effect, because I've done lots of float tank sessions after that. And that's something that I want to get back to doing because I stopped doing it for a while. But I noticed that I can reproduce something of the same effect just laying in bed, of making yourself go completely inert. And the way that I think about it is just letting gravity win, just becoming a thing, just giving up all of your muscular resistance. And it's easier said than done. It's actually hard to do. It takes concentration. But when I do it, I get this crazy feeling in my body of, I start twitching violently, typically, and it's really uncomfortable just for a second. Hard to describe. It almost feels like an extreme tension. And then it goes away almost instantaneously, and then I'm profoundly more physically relaxed than I was before. I think that's real. I don't think that's psychosomatic. I don't think that that's some kind of hallucination or a misinterpretation of something going on. I think that there's just this kind of static tension that's held in my body that takes deliberate, concentrated effort to let go of. So I want to make a routine of doing that as much as possible, at least once or twice a day. Ideally, like taking breaks to do it, like lay down for 10 minutes and just do it and kind of reset. And I think I don't know how big of an impact that will have long term, but it always feels like a huge deal every time I do it. I typically forget to do it unless I can't sleep, and then I'll do it and I'll fall asleep immediately. The long view is I want to get back into proper resistance training and lifting weights because I love doing it and I miss doing it. And I think probably that will be the biggest acceleration up the curve towards being a non-Smeagol man. Food is the other big one, another big one. I am a vegan. A lot of people have recommended that I not be one. And I kind of, part of me is sympathetic with that, but the long and short is it's not something that I'm going to change my mind on. And also, it's almost certainly not the causal factor in the fact that I am dealing with these problems, because the problems precede veganism by decades. I mean, the veganism has not made it worse. It hasn't fixed it, hasn't made it worse. I think that's probably realistically going to be the case. People like to talk about veganism or whatever diet it is that they prefer as being manna from heaven, miracle, fuel. I don't really buy it. I think it's food. I think it does make a difference. I think it's worth paying attention to for the sake of long-term health, avoiding heart disease and cancer and diabetes and all of these things, it's worth doing for its own sake, even if you feel 0% different day to day. So it's something that I was doing anyway. As with all humans, there is a gap between the potential of my diet and the nutritional payload that I'm actually fulfilling or consistently have been fulfilling. So going from being an okay vegan to being an excellent vegan, I think will be a quantum leap. And maybe it will make a big impact in my energy, my overall well-being if I just stick it for a long time, like 90 days or something. Because I go on these sprints of eating really well for a couple weeks and then I get lazy and I fall off. We all know the story. We've all gone through it 100 times. But I'm actually pretty good at this point at doing an almost completely whole foods form of veganism, the whole food plant-based thing. I actually have like keyed in on this being just a low effort proposition. I am just competent enough in the kitchen that I can make it work, and I'm a simple enough ape that I can eat the same handful of things every day and not really get tired of it until I do, and I break, and then I go eat a meal somewhere out, and then I reset, and it's back to the grind, as it were. And I'll be doing more videos about this. I have what I think is a fairly clever system of making this kind of food that's very easy. The thing that always breaks me out of that mold is not grocery shopping enough. And when I don't grocery shop, if I'm in a position where I just don't have food on hand, I will go out and eat burritos. I am a burrito seeking missile. So a good rule that I'm going to implement is I am only allowing myself to go out for food if I'm doing it socially, if I'm with another person. So no more scraping my way, crawling my way over to the 24-hour taqueria to eat a burrito because I'm bored or restless or I just don't have enough food on hand. Unless I have a fellow creeper. I'm not going to give up caffeine and alcohol yet. I drink way more caffeine, certainly. I'm not like a power caffeine user. I drink 1 cup of coffee in the morning and then tea once or twice over the course of the day. I think I'm going to stick to that. I've done the 0 caffeine thing, and I haven't noticed that it makes an enormous impact. That might be something that I amend. I might go back to doing 0 caffeine at some point if I need another boost. The alcohol thing, I basically don't drink anymore, and that's been the case for a while. But there are certain moments socially where it just is too big of a pain in the ass to not drink. Those are really the only times that I do drink. Occasionally I do drink to excess, which isn't great, and it usually knocks me out of the damn game for like 24 hours. Because I'm prone to hangovers. So I think a good rule is stick to just basically never drinking, but when I do drink, I'm having like a hard limit of 3 drinks, and I only drink beer, so 3 beers is my limit. That's about where stuff starts getting fuzzy anyway, and that's the point beyond which I get hangovers, and I think I have, like, can feel it long term. I am taking a few supplements. I take B12 daily because I am a vegan and I'm not an idiot, so I take the B12 supplement. I take a few circulation promoting supplements now. I've been really skeptical of supplements, period, for a long time, but I figure I might as well circulation promoting because I do think that I have kind of repetitive strain issues in certain muscular systems, and the thing that repetitive strain doctors say again and again is you want to promote blood flow to those areas to remove waste out of the cells and to re-nutrify them. Hence the utility of moving the muscles and the desire to improve circulation. So I'm taking turmeric, cayenne pepper, and what else? I take omega-3 supplements as well. The algae kind, and also arguably supplements. I'm adding a lot more garlic and ginger into my diet. Both of those are health promoting generally, and they are circulation promoting. That's, I think, probably a pretty small part of the picture. On top of this, I would like to get blood work done to check my levels of the basic nutrients. I've never done it. I don't have a before to compare it to, but I think it would be good to start doing that. I don't know how expensive or involved it is. I know that you can do it. You can like send away for kits through the mail to do it. And I won't be shocked if I do end up having some kind of nutrient deficiency or deficiencies, plural, because almost everybody does. Sleep also, I think, is a big deal. My sleep has been erratic. I've never had a problem getting adequate sleep because I don't really typically set alarms. So I've been getting 8+ hours for a long time, having been self-employed. Arguably, I get too much sleep. But I have not had like a consistent set sleep schedule for a long time, and I suspect that makes a big difference. New parameters: hard lights off at 1 in the morning, which is typically before I wind up going to sleep. I usually go to sleep sometime around 2, I would guess. So I just want some kind of fail-safe. I think that's just too crazy as a 35-year-old man to be going to sleep at 2 in the morning every single night or later. So for now, 1, I may bump that up as I adjust, and also setting an alarm for every day at 9, so that's built in 8 hours. And I'm going to be doing a thing that I learned actually from Daily Refinement from his channel. So credit to Chris. I think it was like a 3-second rollover that he was doing, where you wake up as soon as you breach consciousness, you have 3 seconds to get out of bed. I'm going to be gentle on myself and do a 5-second rule. So wake up, count to 5, and then exit bed. Otherwise, I fall into this bottomless vortex of looking at stuff on my phone, and I'll stay in bed for like an hour. Just not good for obvious reasons. Also not good because I'm just laying there, kind of in a statically held posture, and those are, I think, good to avoid where avoidable. Where it's not like I'm asleep and my body is completely relaxed. I'm kind of holding a phone and laying there like this. Big question is reading. Like, that's a huge part of my life and not something that I'm willing to give up. And I hate audiobooks. So the question of finding like a health promoting position to read physical books in is going to be a challenge. Other things that I'm going to be doing that don't really fall into any of those umbrellas: keeping a clean apartment is really important to me because I have a small one and it gets really cluttered really fast if I don't get on top of it. Doing the dishes flares up my back though. So I think I'm going to start implementing a rule of having to do dishes as I produce them. So doing dishes after every meal so that I can kind of space it out and I'm not stood in front of the sink for 20 straight minutes doing dishes without breaking, I think will help. Small thing that might add up. A lot of people recommended that I consider hiring help with the reselling stuff. It's something that I've kind of been resistant to, but I think that I'm going to start taking it a little bit more seriously. Short of hiring a full-time employee, I think there are certain parts that I could see definitely delegating that wouldn't be a huge pain in the ass to delegate. Stuff like shipping books after Whatnot orders. It would be good to find somebody who is not on meth, who would be able to do this, maybe just pay a flat fee, figure something out. There's a couple things like that I could do. Also, generally, and this is really going to be a pain point, is reducing the amount of time that I stare at screens. I spend so much time on YouTube. It's such a structural part of my life that I probably am addicted to it. It's always on. I'm always watching something or listening to something. Quite literally always. There's very little downtime when I don't have something that I'm hearing or looking at on a screen. And I haven't looked into the science of whether that is bad, but if I take a fraction of a second to think about it, chances are probably bad. So I want to, wherever possible, listen instead of watch to reduce eye strain because it probably produces exhaustion, and work in time when I just am not stimulated by stuff happening on the computer at all. So not listening to anything, not watching anything. And this, out of everything, it's bizarre. This is the thing that's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do that. So it's probably important that I do that. This seems like a lot, this probably seems like a lot of rules, but I've done stuff like this in the past, and there's a little bit of an adjustment pain period, and then once I adjust to it, I'm good at like doing the new normal thing. I'm not great at sticking the landing long term, but also I have not vlogged about it publicly before, and it would not be publicly embarrassing in front of many thousands of people, or it wouldn't have been in the past, to buckle on this stuff. So I probably won't. And this, as far as I'm concerned, is baseline. This is like kind of covering the rudimentary stuff that should be covered, that constitutes kind of just being a normal, healthy person, as far as I understand it, or my instincts tell me is the case. That's just the general plan. We'll see how it goes. I'll probably stick to this for like 3 months and then reassess and see what kind of progress I have made. It will probably be pretty incremental, but after 3 months, I assume that I will have seen some kind of an improvement. If I haven't seen dramatic improvement with the physical pain symptoms, that's the point at which I probably will contemplate seeking out some kind of professional assistance again. I've developed, this is like a topic for another video, but I have a pretty inborn resistance to paying people for help at this point, because I've done it enough in the past that I know how it is likely to go. And it might not be healthy, but I have a big head of steam of resentment and anger towards the helping professions and helping professionals. Some of them through no fault of their own, some of them absolutely through fault of their own. I'm pretty skeptical. I'm pretty reluctant to allow people to turn a profit off of my suffering. I also don't want to be pig-headed and to stick to that principle at cost of my own health idiotically. I have not found the person who can really make a difference, but that doesn't mean that I couldn't or can't or won't or shouldn't. I am still skeptical. I am reasonably confident that just doing this kind of stuff will make a big enough difference that I won't have to. And I'm skeptical that it would make a huge difference to add in some kind of professional guidance on top of it, at this point at least. But I'm open to being wrong on that at some point down the line. And a lot of people have offered all kinds of suggestions, and I appreciate it. Again, almost all of that stuff is stuff that I've encountered before. I've thought about it. A lot of it I've tried. It just doesn't work. People have asked me if I have lupus, if I have fibromyalgia, if I have Lyme disease. These are all questions that have been asked and answered. I don't have any of them. I don't have a thyroid issue. I got MRIs. They were normal. I don't have any bulging discs. I don't have anything that can be pointed to as this is a discrete medical problem with XYZ fix. I also just am not interested in the really outlandish new age or alternative medicine stuff. I've tried a little bit of it. Just not something that I believe in, not something that I think will be of any benefit to me. Of course, you can never know for sure, yes or no, but experience and reasoned, educated guesses tell me that I just don't want to be involved with those people. I don't want them to have my money, and I don't think that they would help above and beyond placebo. Keep in mind, if I just sound like a hard-headed dumbass, it's because I've been dealing with this since I was 17, and I've been put through the ringer so many times that it's terrain that's really familiar to me, and I have pretty good reasons for having this level of resistance. I'll let you know how it goes. I'm not doing like a gradual ramp up. I'm implementing all of this immediately as of today, tonight, tomorrow. Just jumping in feet first. Probably take me like 3 days to get used to it, and then we'll be off.